of the chairperson of the IEBC, the affidavit of the CEO of the IEBC, and the affidavits of our returning officers and other officers of the Commission, together with the annexures, and also, of course, the famous Form 34B as evidence. Thank you.
So for the returning officers around the country, all of them?
Not for all the returning officers. The affidavits are in respect of areas where issues were raised. Thank you.
All right,
is this all you're carrying?
No. Our bus is right behind.
A bus.
Oh, it's a bus.
It's a bus. It's
Okay.
a humble bus.
Well, since everyone is dropping numbers, NASA had 25,000. You at some point brought 54,000 documents. Maybe just give us a total. What do you expect? You said it's a bus, but in terms of the documents, the pages.
Our CEO is right behind. I believe he'll be able to respond to that. But yes, I can say we have Gazette notices in respect of the tallying centers and the polling stations in which we conducted the elections. We also have, in terms of box files, which you will see very soon. And we also have hard disks that contain all the annexures and evidence. Thanks.
Have you had any struggle gathering information you need for this particular petition? Have there been any issues accessing some of that information?
Not at all. I mean, we only had the election last week. We still have all the forms and the results with us, including the Form 34C.
And then maybe, are you ready for the case now?
Yes, we are. We are ready for the case. I mean, we conducted the election, and for that reason, we are ready to defend the result of the election.
All right. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Many thanks. There, Ben, back in studio, speaking to one of the officials from the Commission. And a lot of activity outside now. Let's just take you towards that bus she was talking about. Here it is. Oh my. And it is high speed. Looks like it would go through the gate, the kind of speed it has come through. But yes, the IEBC had an escort as well. We've seen that police vehicle. Churchill there, of course, with the Jubilee team, perhaps still coming to find that all of their documentation has been filed. But this right here is the bus carrying the documentation, the responses by the first and the second respondent. That is IEBC as a commission, as well as the chair. So the driver of this bus, quite, don't sure what the term to use, Ben, but there you go, the documents inside the bus, quite a number. We'll wait to see. We understand the CEO is accompanying, whether he'll be telling us these numbers we've been hearing being dropped from 25,000 by NASA. Then there was 54,000 pages that were filed the other day. So here we are, finally. Ben, just about an hour to go to the deadline. Remember, midnight was the deadline for the submission of the responses to the Raila Odinga Kalonzo Musyoka petition. So this is the moment. IEBC coming just an hour before that deadline, and in this bus, those documents, they are their responses to the issues that have been raised by the petitioner under the National Super Alliance. Of course, the three respondents, IEBC, the chair, the third respondent being President Uhuru Kenyatta, and we saw his team earlier on here. A number of them still around, actually, for the president, and making sure that all their documentation is in place. They're going through the same with the registrar here, and just confirming that they have all their documents in place ahead of this presidential petition. Tomorrow, Ben, we will be having more applications being made. Of course, we'll continue to cover that for you. Let's just also see what we understand their lawyers, the four lead counsels for the IEBC, PLO Lumumba, Paul Muite, Karori Kamau, as well as Paul Nyamodi. So those are the lead counsels. Several people here, as you can see. Outside the IEBC, we see the Deputy CEO there, alongside quite a number of the officials from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. So we will wait, of course. We'll most likely be getting a statement from the CEO, who, if he actually shows up here, we understand he's supposed to come, but we are yet to see him. But we already see the Deputy CEO, and perhaps we will get a word. But the officers that were accompanying these documents, everyone now waiting to see them being loaded outside, gotten outside the bus. Offloaded is the word. But I don't know if you can still hear me.
Sidhani hawa desi wengine wanakuja. Nani? Kilobo kwa. Oh, ndio hiyo. Lakini commissioners
All right, so the IEBC, Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, arriving at the Supreme Court this evening, and we see these stacks of documents here. And what we've been able to hear from one of the officers who spoke to us a few moments ago is that we have the affidavit of the chairman, who is also the second respondent in this petition. The affidavit as well by the CEO, who is here, Ezra Chiloba. We'll seek to have a word with him, of course, after they file their submissions at the registry here, the Supreme Court. So, Ben, they've managed to beat that deadline. It is now 11:10, so just 50 minutes before that time, midnight, expires. They have been able to come here. So we want to just try and grab the CEO for a quick interview. So just come with me. Let's hear some of what is happening here. Actually, we're trying to get a word from you. You finally have made it, CEO, with your team and the documentation here at the Supreme Court. Talk to us about what we have here.
Well, yeah, as you can see, it's been a lot of work since we started this process. We have now brought in our response together with the supporting documentation, and we hope to do that, to file within time. So as we speak now, the registry is open for us to be able to submit or to file our response.
All right. Yeah. Have you faced any challenges compiling all of the documents we are seeing here?
Of course, we only had 4 days from the day of filing, unlike the petitioners who had much more time. For us, we had only 4 days to do that. And I want to thank my team, the team of lawyers and my colleagues who've been working around the clock to ensure that we have all the necessary documents that will help this process to move forward. The day before yesterday, we also brought other documents, which were Form 34As, as required by the law. And this is just a continuous process. So, yeah, it required a lot of time, and that's why we were working up to this hour.
So the other day, 54,000 documents was submitted. How many do we have tonight?
We got volumes here. We got about 12 volumes of documentation, which is basically a set for each and every party that is required to have a set of those documents. So we have about 12 volumes. Which is basically the response, the affidavits, and the evidence that we are filing today.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So because of time, we'll have to go
and get in.
present. Yeah.
All right, and a flurry of cables and cameras here. So let's... All right, Ben, so we're just going to follow. It's a number of documents here and battery of journalists trying to get those all-important shots. So these are the intrigues of live coverage, television, Ben. So as you can see there, a commission that has said the 4 days is all they had. Perhaps they felt they could have done better with more days, or if they had more days to be able to put together their responses. But 54,000 documents is what they submitted before. Tonight is talked about quite a number of this, as you can see, bound forms that they're bringing into the registry of the Supreme Court. So we're just going to walk with them as we go into the registry. So the CEO leading that team walking into the registry of the Supreme Court. So tomorrow what will be happening, Ben, after tonight, is that they will be making their written submissions. So the petitioners as well as the respondents will submit their written submissions. So you have a lot of directing as well from some of the photographers to make sure they get that all-important shot that perhaps we'll be seeing in the local daily. So tomorrow we'll be having the written submissions from the various parties, that is the petitioners, the respondents as well, and thereafter, of course, applications that require to be made. Whoever may want to be enjoined in the suit can do so tomorrow. If the Attorney General wants to be a friend of the court as well, he can do so. So there they go in and posing for that all-important photograph here at the Supreme Court registry.
Thank you very much. Our time is up.
All right, the CEO leading the IEBC team going into the registry to submit their documentation before time runs out. Remember, midnight is when they must file their responses to the petition. So the media here being asked to first give way to these loads and loads, stacks and stacks of documents, if you like, as you're seeing them there. Very good camera work by Nebat, making sure you get a close look at the documents being filed here by the first and the second respondents. That's the IEBC, of course, as well as IEBC chair, who's the returning officer for the presidential election. We haven't seen any of their lawyers actually tonight, but we do know PLO Lumumba, Paul Muite, Paul Nyamodi, as well as Kamau Karori are their lead counsels. Of course, that's supported by a battery of other lawyers, but none of them being spotted here this evening, other than the CEO and his deputy and other officials from the commission escorting the other officers who have brought the documents here at the registry of the Supreme Court. Ben.
Right, thank you, Sophia. Sophia, they are still keeping an eye on what's happening there Ezra Chiloba, the CEO of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, they are leading the IEBC as they make their way to try and beat that midnight deadline. They have about 40 minutes or so to present the IEBC's response to that presidential election petition filed by the National Super Alliance. Sophia, I don't know if you can still hear me. We were trying to hear there has been some discussion about whether that pre-trial hearing will be happening on Saturday, or what's some of the factors that are set, to hinder that, if any. I don't know what you've been able to hear there, the Supreme Court. I don't know if you can still hear me. I know there's a bit of a pull and push there. What's happening with that?
Yes, I can hear you, Ben. First, maybe to explain some of the pictures you're seeing here, is that some of the Jubilee or President Kenyatta's team and council were still inside the Supreme Court register. You can see Churchill there, who was a chief agent for President Kenyatta. So they have been asked to leave to create room for the IEBC team, who have also come with their stacks of documents to be able to get in. What has been going on in the past few moments is a verification process, just to ensure that all that is required in terms of their submissions takes place. So now, with the clearing, or rather, those officials being asked to make way, now IEBC officials being allowed to get in with their documents. And it's quite a process, because remember, it was around 9:30 when the President Uhuru Kenyatta's council and officials were here to submit their documents. And so they have been going through that with the chief registrar of the Supreme Court, alongside other officials that are still burning the midnight oil to ensure all is well. So in regard to the question you asked about the pre-trial conference, so what we understand is going to happen tomorrow, there will be the written submissions that will be made by all the parties, as the petitioners as well as the respondents. Then on Saturday, applications that may be made tomorrow by those who want to be part of the petition, then the respondents as well as the petitioners who would want to, of course, reply to these applications, whether it's you have the likes of Michael Wainaina, who wants to join as a respondent, saying there were no issues with the election, or Ekuru Court who wants to join on the side of the petitioners. So the parties involved will be able to respond to that on Saturday morning. Then Saturday afternoon, the judges will then have a look at all of these submissions, all of these applications that have been put before them. So the pre-trial conference, Ben, will happen, we understand, on Saturday at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Saturday is when the judges, alongside the parties involved, will sit together to ensure that they iron out the key issues first that will be coming before the judges for determination when the hearing proper begins. And that could start either Sunday or Monday. The judges will be giving direction in as far as that is concerned, Ben.
All right, Sophia Onuna, they are keeping an eye. We'll just don't go too far. We'll be coming to you to get what's happening. But maybe when exactly IEBC, there, as we can see, led by Ezra Chiloba, when are they likely to be making those submissions? When are they likely to be submitting those that stack of documents? And maybe also, we have not been able to see the chair of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, who is the second respondent in this case. Where is he?
Well, usually, Ben, it usually is not tradition to see the actual participants, if you like, or parties here, although we did see Raila Odinga and his deputy accompanied by their lawyers when they submitted the petition, which was different from what we saw in 2013 when just their council appeared. But this time around, clearly, the chair of the IEBC, that's Wafula Chebukati, choosing not to come, because this is a matter that is seized of his team and that of the IEBC. So it is not a requirement in law that he should be here, so he has chosen not to be, and the matter is being handled by the officials and the lawyers. So in as far as the submissions you're asking about, that is what is happening now. They're submitting their responses to the petition. And we've been told earlier they have affidavits that have been signed by the chair, by the CEO, and more evidence as well. So we are now being allowed to get in so we can have a better look and also hear from the Chief Registrar here at the Supreme Court. Let's take a listen, Ben.
He declared this after having 2 copies of the same Form 34Bs.
Yes.
This cannot fit here.
Okay.
So where 34B is, we have said we have annexed that 34B as a separate document. Can I have Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3? One copy.
Willy.
Yeah, Volume 1, 2, 3.
Willy. Mngetusaidia na ile chai mazi. Kuna time chai. Mtusaidia na ile chai.
Let me just I'll finish this way and then shortly. So, where it is WWC,
Yes.
the Form 34B, we have said we attach them externally. And we have clearly marked such an attachment. As you can see here, that this is the WWC. Yes, WWC, Volume 1. Sorry. Volume. This is Volume 3. Can somebody? No, Volume 2. Can I please have Volume 3? Yes.
So, Mr. Omboa, what I'd like to request you
to
do is to give us one complete set.
Okay.
So that then we'll take time to organize the other.
So this is one complete set. There's only one other external attachment, which is contained in the affidavit of Mr. Ezra Chiloba, which is a Gazette notice showing all the poll stations in the country, and it's very bulky. And we have done in the same way, say that we have attached it externally. And here it is. Okay. Yeah. So this is one complete set. One complete set.
All right.
You can start and then you put the time.
So we will organize them in the order that they appear in the index.
Volume 1, Volume 2.
Since you had earlier presented the documents to us and we had assessed,
Yes.
we'll then mark the time. As what time is it?
11:30.
11:25.
11:25.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So there are 6 volumes in total.
I could also have a
Each
similar
complete
stamp. Oh, sorry. There's one more document. I'm sorry. That's Form 34C, which is a single document in a whatever file, in a Spring file. Does anybody have a pair of scissors behind there? And the soft copies in a hard disk. Thank you very much.
Need assistance?
Good. So this is the Form 34C, which made the final declaration of the presidential result as one document.
And those are the
Yes, and now
copies.
yes, a hard disk containing all those documents in that particular order.
Okay. Our staff will confirm that what you've presented in hard copy corresponds with what you've given us at the electronic copy.
All right.
So I'd like to then ask you to move here so that now we can organize all the 8 sets for the court and the sets you need to serve the other parties.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
All right, so the IEBC team there, being guided by the Registrar of the Supreme Court, going through the documentation that they have filed this evening, and they're going for further clarity on the various documents they've been able to bring tonight, Ben. And as you may have heard there, they did talk about registering and putting on the record what time it is. They've actually been able to make it here at the Supreme Court 11:25. So it's interesting, if anything were to come up, that if they needed either to get more documentation or something, what would happen then if that happened past midnight. But we will be getting more clarity. But finally, all of the three respondents, Ben, have filed their responses with the registrar, with the registry here at the Supreme Court, and the registrar of the Supreme Court is in charge of this process alongside other officials to just ensure that all of the requirements are being met. Ben, if you can hear me.
Thank you, Sophia. Just hang around there, of course, if anything happens. But as Sophia is telling us there, and those what's happening right now is that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has been able finally to hand in or submit that response, their response to that NASA presidential election petition. We did see the response by President Uhuru Kenyatta being made earlier in the evening. IBC have been able to do that at around 25 minutes past 11 o'clock. There are around 30 or so minutes to go. Sophia, they are raising a very interesting question. What would happen if they needed to go back to the drawing board and get something? Gentlemen, as we wind up, and of course we'll be keeping an eye on what's happening just in case we need to go back to Sophia. But this much as we wind up, we have seen a lot happening. We did see 25 pages of documents by NASA. I thought that was